Hi, I'm Rodger Schnellenberger.
And I'm Bruce Benefiel. Welcome to One World.
Tonight, Bruce and I are going to be discussing the program, a concept, if you will, called One World. The show, by design, looks at and raises consciousness about this global perspective and world we live in. Normally, Bruce will be the interviewer of people from around the valley, but tonight we thought it would be good to interview Bruce to see his perspectives on One World. Let's get right to Bruce. Bruce, what do you mean by One World?
One World, I think, can be summed up in the concepts of what is encompassed in what we currently know as the quote-unquote New Age.
By New Age, we often feel that it gets a bad rap. What would be your perspective of New Age in terms of putting that into words, into a concept that people would not shun at and be a bit more open to discuss?
New Age, I think, simply can be put as the balancing of existing systems, including belief systems. Mm-hmm. You know, we all adhere to some kind of belief system. Mm-hmm. And the balancing of those in order to work in harmony. You know, God knows that this world is so out of kilter right now because of misinformation, because of lack of information, which creates ignorance, which in turn creates fear. I like to think of fear as false evidence appearing real. Mm-hmm. And we get caught in the illusion. And we don't realize that we're here together. And we live separately rather than in unison.
You made several good points there. One by way of what fear means to me. I feel a lot of people are motivated by fear. And I believe it's in our belief systems, particularly in this Western way of thinking, that we're motivated by a lot of selfish interests that seem to me to be opposed to what the New Age way of thinking would be lending to people.
Sure. You know, as I spoke earlier about existing systems, what we're based upon now is basically control type of systems, mm-hmm. where there is a certain elite group or person that is in charge and that's not really willing to delegate his complete authority. Whereas with the concept of One World, you have a sharing of responsibility, which brings each person to the level of their own accountability. Mm-hmm. And I think that can be a better term rather than using New Age, you know, the age of accountability. We've got to be responsible for what we do and how we act.
True. Let me ask you, Bruce, what do you want to do with this show? In your opinion, from your perspective, what would you want people that watch One World to go away from the show from, or with, I should say?
What I want to explore are different perspectives, different belief systems, to view them objectively, to ask critical questions, to ascertain the essence or the truth surrounding the core of that belief system. Mm-hmm. And in turn, sharing the information. If people want to have more information, we've got a P.O. box, or we'll have a P.O. box that will make that information available.
So this concept of One World is something that extends well beyond the parameters of a television show.
Oh, sure. The shows that I'm going to be doing and the people that I'm going to be interviewing are going to be providing basic information, nothing too detailed, because we can get lost very easily. And in the time span of a half an hour, we can just barely touch the surface on most of the issues.
Not true. Well, Bruce, let's talk about you and how you came to this decision or evolving in this process, coming upon the whole idea of creating One World. How are you involved in this?
Well, throughout my life and childhood, I'd had many different experiences that led me to striving for harmony, for balance, for loving one another, and sharing that openly and honestly. So as I began looking at the world around me, seeing what was there, seeing what I thought needed to be changed in order to create better existing working relationships, and relationships cover the whole gamut, whether it be at work, personal, love life, with God the Creator or whatever. We're all involved in relationships, and these need to be brought into harmony. So what had happened is, during a process that I was going through, I explored what it would take to bring these existing systems together, and came up with the idea of an international cultural center that would blend the essences of each culture, both the psychospiritual technologies as well as the scientific technologies. And from that point would bring forth creative solutions to the problems that we face globally, and have the technology to take care of it.
Great. One thing that always troubles me about people wanting to, I guess, discuss a global community and New Age thinking, it's very good, but they seem to be incredibly ethereal and very vague about the idea of love and relationships. When it seems to me, I come from a classical realist education.
Sure.
I was in the seminary for some years, and life was a challenge, but a very real challenge, and very daily experiences, rather than being lost in God in that experience, which is very good, and you get a lot of good information from that. I guess what I'm trying to ask here is, how do you propose to make this very real for people? It seems to me there needs to be a living language, a living concept that people need to hear.
I agree.
From people such as yourself.
I agree. You talk about the ethereal approach. It's nice to get caught up in the experience and the feeling, somewhat of a euphoria at times. However, we live in a day-to-day, three-dimensional world that we have to bring those concepts and those feelings back down into and apply. And in essence, walk the talk rather than just spew it out. And that, I feel, is what the current trend is. There's a lot of people that are beginning to take responsibility for their own actions, for their own thinking. It's not what you think, feel, or believe, but how you're perceived. So the actions speak a lot louder than words. It's tough.
Very tough.
Because we have a lot of challenges, we have a lot of blocks, we have a lot of resistance. Because people don't like change. People like things the way they are, or the way they used to be. And in order to move forward, we have to be willing to change and incorporate new information, integrate that, apply it however is necessary, and take each day at a time. Function in reality as it is now, not how it was 5 minutes ago.
Let me ask you something. Have you had an experience, something in your life that was very real to you, very tangible, something you could feel, something you imaged, but yet it was very real, that changed your life, that made you change?
Yeah. It was a very profound experience I had when I was in college. I'd gone through an emotional turmoil. I decided I was going to marry a woman and had broken up with her before I went to school. Went back to ask her to marry me. She'd been married for a month. I'd only been gone 2. So it just destroyed me emotionally. So I went back to school, and in essence, I got down on my knees. And I said, Father, show me what's truth, and I'm willing to die for it. Now, granted, that's a pretty strong statement coming from a 17-year-old kid. Okay?
Indeed.
However, a couple of weeks later, I was in meditation in the afternoon after class, and I was listening to Journey's first album, a song called In the Morning Day. And there was a particular sequence of notes and bars that were put together that made it very conducive for this to happen. Essentially what happened is, during the meditation, I was asked by a voice that was very familiar to me. I'd heard it since I was 6 years old, and has never led me down a wrong road, as long as I listened to it. still small voice, if you will. And from there, this voice says, Bruce, are you willing to die for what you believe in? And immediately I said yes. Right after that, I was taken out of my body, is what it felt like, because I was catapulted upward. And I went into a white light. Now this white light felt like everything, and yet nothing. All but void. So what I did was look around, because it completely surrounded me, and I was able to see. And I paused for a moment and thought, wow, is there more? And immediately I was taken upon another scene, if you will, and that being of pinpoints of light in a sphere. And this was surrounded by an indigo color. I was in the center of it. And it was explained to me that these were the ones that I was to work with in order to facilitate a New World administration. Blew me away. After that, I was put back into my body, and I say put back in because when I re-entered, it was as though I had not been breathing, my heart had not been beating, because when I came back in, it was a as soon as and it scared me tremendously. There again, I don't know if it was false evidence appearing real or not, but it prompted me to go down to the library that was on the campus there, and I started searching everything to find out what that experience was. The closest thing I came to was that of people who'd gone through near-death experiences, where they had seen a light at the end of the tunnel, but yet not reached it.
Fascinating. Fascinating personal experience that obviously meant something to you in your life.
It did, and profoundly. It gave me a reason for being. Although in expressing that with a lot of different people, I've had a lot of resistance. So I've been very reluctant to share that with many people at one time.
Well, for obvious reasons, it's, if I will, a very naked experience.
Yeah.
But an experience I think a lot of people out there, and I personally have had, very fleeting moments, but sometimes the feeling engages me and stays with me for a long time.
Sure.
I find it very easy to bury as well.
Right. How I operate, or how I attempt to do my best at, is with the simple philosophy of no games, no secrets. The universe doesn't have any. Why should we? All of our thoughts, all of our actions are open for scrutiny to who knows what. So it's as though we are naked. Why not drop those barriers and drop those shields or those masks and share openly and honestly? Because we are. You know, we have these clothing, or this clothing and these bodies, but the true essence of us is there for all to see.
Fascinating. Bruce, let's talk about the show One World and its direction,
Sure.
if we will. What essentially, who do you want to bring on? What topics do you want to discuss?
Okay, let's start with that. I hope to be able to bring on many different people from areas such as metaphysics, which covers, to date anyway, astrology, numerology, palmistry, channeling, you know, these types of things where there's a lot of consternation and confusion and hodgepodgery. Because there's a lot of people out there that's taking people for a buck, and it's not right. You know, there's a lot of psychics that are out there that are giving readings and things like that are making projections for people. And if people are open to that, they're going to take that in. And they're going to believe that. So they create a whole new belief system. So they're walking around, you know, creating this. So in actuality, the psychic's projections become that person's reality, and they create it. Good, bad, or indifferent.
Sure.
Okay? The other areas I want to explore are those of the socioeconomic systems, how they're working, how they're not working. Political, I don't know if we'll get into that too much at all. I'm sure there will be some political issues raised with the discussions. I want to look at human services and the availability of the means necessary to take care of those less fortunate. I work with developmentally disabled adults now, And that to me has been a tremendous blessing, because it gives me another perspective of how those people live, how they're being taken care of, what they're lacking, what they're given, what they're not given. And these are things that I feel, when addressed properly, objectively, critically, openly, when you're striving for the truth of the situation, and you're not playing games, and you're looking at the truth for what it is. And you may have some stuff on it, you may have some blocks on it, but that doesn't change what the truth is.
Truth
And that's
might be very ugly as well.
Exactly, and quite often is. And that's what we're hoping to change, to give more information which dispels that ignorance, which brings about the knowledge and the wisdom, which is the right action.
Once again, fascinating. And it seems to me that the topics, the issues you wish to probe on One World are very real. There's got to be a very real, tangible sense of approaching people and where they are in terms of what does this mean, these concepts, to the man sitting at home that has 3 children, you know, that's been in a job for 15, 20, 30 years, that has been about a belief for so long, and may suddenly feel a sense of void, or not feel the sense of void.
I can only speak for myself. I've got 4 kids. I'm divorced. I love those kids dearly. It bothers me to think the kind of world that we have created may destroy them if we don't change it.
Change. There again, a vague word, but yet a very powerful word, in effect.
One thing that's consistent.
It is consistent. Probably the one thing in the universe that is consistent is change. Understood. The idea, let's move on to the whole practical issue here, though, because your life lends very well to what you believe in terms of helping those less fortunate than yourself, or myself, let's say. It's a very real issue. And there again, one of the reasons why New Age thinking, a lot of metaphysics for that matter, gets a bad rap, because it's nice. It's nice to have these concepts. It's nice to have this idea. But that just it stops for a lot of people just right there at that point.
Sure.
It's not real to them.
A lot of people call them warm fuzzies.
Yeah.
You know, it gives you a warm feeling. But it's like the sales seminars that, you know, multi-level marketing rely upon, and the building of emotion. And going out and striving, hey, I'm going to make $1 million tomorrow. That's what these people go out of these seminars feeling. The same thing with the meditations and the channelings and all this type of things. It still needs to be brought down to that practical level. What can I use in my day-to-day living from that? Do I want to? Do I want to have something that I can use? Or do I want to just go and let myself float and feel free or whatever and experience that euphoria and then forget about it when I go to work the next day? You know, you have that separation. We have lifestyles that are built upon separation.
True.
You know, city, state, or state and church, things of that nature. It just, to me, doesn't make sense, because we are one people, we are one planet, we share the food, we share the air, we share the water. Why can't we share cultures? Why can't we share beliefs? And not try to go around and criticize each one of those. Learn more about them. Share information. Me sharing with you, you sharing with me. A Hindu sharing with a Christian. You know, a Taoist sharing with a Muslim.
It's very important. I think we're seeing massive breakthroughs in society today with the USSR, the United States, the relationships we're building there, the Berlin Wall coming down. You're seeing a lot of what we were talking about, the global community, really coming into play here. Just personal experience on my part. I've been watching a lot of Joseph Campbell lately. And
Neat guy.
Wonderful, wonderful man. He has a lot of good things to say about these experiences, out of body, if it were, and really relays a lot of what we're experiencing as a Western culture here in Phoenix as the people that are experiencing the very same thing in a tribal nation in Africa. And it's wonderful just to see that openness, that experience that we all have. It's very real. It's here.
Yeah.
But here again, we have these walls around us. Let me get to my point here, really what I want to ask you here. If you could have one wish, a change, that God would say, Bruce, you have one wish. What do you wish to change? What would that be?
Well, that's a tough one, Roger. I think the one thing that I would want to change is the criticism and the condemnation that people have towards one another.
Mm-hmm. It's a good wish. It would seem to me that would open up a lot of communication, as we said.
Sure.
Seems to me if we communicate with friends, enemies, whoever, a lot of barriers are broken, as I was saying before about the Berlin Wall coming down. It's wonderful, healing stuff we're dealing with here.
Well, there was a guy, a couple thousand years ago that made a big impact on this planet. His name was Jesus Christ. And in his teachings, he taught not to condemn, judge, or criticize unless you can walk in that other man's shoes. It's a physical impossibility. One person cannot get into another person's body to date.
Sure.
So why? You don't know where that person's at. You don't know what he's been through. You don't know what he's experiencing. You don't know what he's hurting from. You don't know what he's joyous about. Unless you can put your own beliefs aside and ask him and be open to what he's willing to share. Or she.
Or she. Definitely want to include all people in this.
Oh, we must not forget the women. I
Oh,
think
yes.
many years ago, from what I understand, this world was set up in a matriarchal system, and there was no war. Makes
Speak
you
to me
wonder.
about this system before the system as we know it.
Well, the information specifically that I'm speaking of is the findings from the arks that have been found in the plateaus of Turkey and that area. They have all had idols, statues, dolls, whatever you want to call them, of female goddesses. No males. And in researching some of the other information, right off the top of my head, I can't pinpoint it because I've read quite a bit of information in my few short years. But it does explain that there was, theoretically, a time where the woman ruled. And if you think about it, she still does.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes,
It's the man's ego that has gotten in the way to progression. Because when we, I say we as men, realize that if it weren't for the women, we wouldn't have children, we wouldn't have the nurturing. Our mothers, gave us tremendous love and affection as children, fed us, clothed us, where our fathers were away working. Our fathers were also working to support our mothers. And it's the denial of that and the controlling nature of man's ego which creates a lot of the problems and creates that duality, if you will.
It's like reason mastering the beast of sorts.
Exactly.
Taming the
Speaking
beast.
of the beast, from what I understand, we get our word Satan from the Greek word thetan, T-H-E-T-A-N. Simply means thinker. If you think about it, your mind, your intellect, is where all duality exists. It's where all judgment exists. And what Christ, as well as the other enlightened ones on this planet have taught, is to operate from the heart. Oneness. It's where the word of God is written. Okay? Listen to it. It speaks very loud.
Fascinating. If you could, do you have anybody off the top of your head that you've been thinking about that you'd like to communicate with on the show? Anybody in mind in terms of particular types of people that might give good perspective to one world?
Well, I think there are some very good people. What I'm looking for are people who have not only been in the various fields, but also have the credibility of being there, such as doctorates in parapsychology, okay, MBAs, people who have done their homework and have put the effort out to get where they're at. And I think those people, especially once they've been in, you know, these environments for some period of time, they have both the credibility, the expertise, and the wisdom to go with what they're saying.
Make a lot of sense to me. I think people need real examples to expedite real concepts.
Sure.
It would seem to me that that'd be a very wise way of approaching the issue, because it is something that is very real. More and more we do have a lot of people that are raising their own consciousness, asking questions. And here again I get back to the whole idea, partly because this has been a new concept for me, as if scales came from my eyes about a year ago, in terms of having a real spiritual enlightenment personally, and yet really starting to see what's going on in terms of what the Bush administration is doing, what people are doing, government, politics. And it's frightening.
It's scary.
Yeah, it is.
Downright scary.
It is scary. Having really not been aware of lies, so to speak. And the thing of it is that they're half-truths mixed with full truths.
Right.
You know, and it's not just the government. You know, they are everywhere.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is they is us.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's what I'm starting to see.
We deceive ourselves so often into believing certain things and putting energy into ideas and concepts that we haven't had the time to test. You know, one of the basic things that I have spent the majority of my life doing is testing my truth, being willing to put it on the chopping block and whack away. What stands, stands. What doesn't is history. But that works for me.
Good point. Good point. It seems to me even people out there in the viewing audience, it's easy to sit back and look at a show such as this and look at those two. Things can be very contrived, or people can think they look very contrived. Often you're not dealing with truth, you're dealing with people's perception of truth.
Exactly.
Their own perception. And what I find it very difficult to, in just in personal relationships, is to deal with that first. You know, there is a truth, and it might be true, and it might be undeniable. It might be an ugly, undeniable truth. You know, but then you may have a total different perspective
But
of that
view
truth.
it for what it is. And by releasing that, we're able to create agreement, harmony, cooperation at many different levels, not only within ourselves, but also within the systems that we work within. You know, it's fine to go up on a mountaintop and meditate, but you're one person up on top of a mountaintop meditating.
It's true.
And you're not doing any damn good to anybody but yourself,
Indeed.
if you're even doing that.
It's a long process. It's a long process,
Sure.
continuing, ever continuing.
Now, that's not to say that going up on that mountain and meditating is wrong or bad, because it is a very integral part of self-development, because you have to take yourself away from things in order to view them. You have to be able to see things objectively and view them, own them, and work through them.
And make them very real in your everyday life.
Sure.
Well, Bruce, thanks. Well, there you have it. Conversation with Bruce Benefiel. Appreciate your enlightening conversation, your journey, as it were. We look forward to several more journeys with other people as you go on.
Thank you very much, Roger. It was a real pleasure having someone to share openly with. And I thank you all for watching, and I hope you do join us for future episodes of One World as we explore things that do create harmony, balance, cooperation, and community.
Thanks for watching.